All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Training Thursdays with the Stoplight Customer Success Team. My name's Amy, and I am joined today by my colleague Cheryl, and together we'll be your host for today's training session. As we get started, we're going to go ahead and turn off our cameras so that you can focus on the presentation. All right, before we get started, here's a few notes about the logistics of this webinar. First, if you have any questions during the presentation today, feel free to post those in the Q&A window. We have people monitoring that window and they will respond to the questions that are asked. At the conclusion of our webinar, we will post all of the questions and their answers in the Stoplight community and Discord. And finally, for those of you watching the recorded version of this training session, you can find the posted links in the video description below. And if you have any questions while viewing the recording, you can join us in the Stoplight community and Discord and use the training tag to post your questions. So let's get started. The purpose of today's training is to review some key Stoplight concepts and walk through an overview of the Stoplight Studio interface. I'll be starting our session today with a quick overview of how the Stoplight platform can assist you and your organization with your API development needs. And from there, we'll review a few key concepts that will help you navigate the platform. Then Cheryl will introduce us to the Stoplight Studio user interface and review the features and functionality there. So now let's take a quick look at the key features of Stoplight and how they can help you and your organization enhance your API development processes. Stoplight's API design features allow you to develop quality APIs with a collaborative approach to an API design-first philosophy. It helps create and prototype your APIs using our intuitive visual editor for open API specifications, and you can create your APIs in line with industry best practices. Discussions allows members to add comments, ask questions, and interact within the Studio interface. Discussions also integrates with popular task tools like Slack and Jira to help facilitate collaboration outside of your workspace as well. And with the Catalog API, you can easily access your bundled references with long-lived Workspace tokens. Catalog API consumers can safely integrate directly with their CI/CD pipeline to facilitate testing, SDK generation, and API gateway configuration. With Stoplight's API mocking features, you can instantly create a mock version of your API based on your open API specifications. API mocking allows your front-end client application developers and back-end services development teams to develop their projects in parallel. The mock server simulates real APIs by providing endpoints and validation rules described in your API documentation, allowing your API consumers the ability to see your APIs in action. With the Try It feature, you have the ability to preview and test your API operation on a live server as you work. With Stoplight's API documentation features, you can provide a top-notch developer experience for internal and external consumers through automatically generated documentation based on your open API files. This will help internal and external users discover, learn, and integrate with your APIs quickly by publishing interactive API documentation, tutorials, and code samples that are always up to date. And with Stoplight flavored Markdown, you can create supporting articles and enhance your documentation experience. And finally, Stoplight's governance features allow you to govern your APIs at scale with an always in sync central repository of API designs, schemas, and API documentation. You can easily share, apply, and enforce standards across all of your API designs to provide consistency, reusability, and better governance throughout your API program. You can utilize Stoplight's public style guides to leverage sets of curated API design rules around security and design themes. With component libraries, you can create projects that contain data models that you can reuse across API projects in your workspace. And using the proposals feature, you can see recent API design changes at a glance and keep track of changes across your Git connected projects. So now that we've reviewed how Stoplight can enhance your API development process, let's take a minute to review some of the key concepts to understand within Stoplight. The first concept to understand is roles. While workspace rules are focused on access for managing settings and changes at the workspace level, project and team roles focus on level of access within individual projects. I'm not going to dive into the specific descriptions and permissions for each of the workspace and project roles at this time, but I would highly recommend that you become familiar with these roles as you begin working within your workspace. You can learn more about the different roles by visiting our product documentation page and searching for roles. Now let's look at the hierarchy within Stoplight and the two main user interfaces that you will encounter. Within Stoplight, you have a workspace and a studio interface. Your hierarchy begins with your workspace. Within your workspace, you will establish your look and feel, as well as set up integrations with your Get repos. You'll also configure your SSO options, and you can create and manage your members and projects all within the workspace interface. And in Studio, you will design and manage your different APIs, style guide, and component library projects and their associated artifacts. Workspace members can begin to navigate through the different groups and into individual projects. When selecting a project, a member can learn more about the specific APIs associated with that project, and based on the member's project role, may move into editing the selected project. This will transition them from the workspace to the studio interface. When moving between your different projects, you'll navigate from Studio back to the workspace where you can select a new project and then head back into Studio to edit the specific artifacts associated with the project. This is where your API designers and tech writers will likely be spending the majority of their time. Today, we'll be focusing on the Studio user interface and how your technical teams will interact within Studio. So now that we reviewed how Stoplight can help with your API designs and how to navigate through it, I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl, who's going to take us on a tour, of the Studio interface. Cheryl, it's all yours.
Thanks, Amy. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Studio, and we're going to go over the information that is across the buttons in the top toolbar. We'll talk then about the editor pane, and then we'll come over here and talk about the project sidebar. So the first button that you have is the Go to Docs. So this is going to take you back to your workspace in the documentation view. Right next to that is the hamburger menu. And just a side note, if depending upon what subscription you are in or version of the workspace and your particular role, you may not see everything that I have because I am in a pro team subscription and I have an owner role. All right, so at the hamburger menu, you have the Go to Docs button. You have the Preferences button. This also gives you the ability to change your visibility if you like dark versus light. And this is user specific. Does not affect your other colleagues within the workspace. You can then download a project zip. You can what's best practice recommended is if you are working in a Stoplight web project, which we are currently doing, then we recommend that once you have your project completed, you download your project zip. And then you also have the ability to export the spectral file. The next button is the keyword search button. It gives you the ability to type a keyword and search all of the artifacts that are within the particular project. And then right next to that, we have the plus button. Now, this is a fully loaded button. It has a lot of functionality in it. And so we're going to go ahead and you can create an API, an endpoint, a model, an article in this plus button. And then you also have the Stoplight config button. Now, the Stoplight config button has some functionality that is specific to a Git repository that allows you to place some parameters around including or excluding what that's specifically pulled into your project from your repo. And this button has a lot more functionality that I recommend you take a look at the documentation for. And as I might note here, I am not connected to a repo at this point in time. I am leveraging the web projects. All right, you can go ahead and create an image from here as well. And then you can also create a table of contents. So this also gives you the ability to customize the order of files in the sidebar. So that is the documents sidebar. and you can override a title or a file. You can customize published URLs from articles or API artifacts. You can add or remove files in that sidebar, allowing you to kind of hide those in the table of contents. You can set APIs or articles to have internal visibility to prevent it from appearing in the table of contents for public projects and or visibility to non-members. And then there's also a default state that you can set the groups to be expanded or collapsed. So there's a lot of functionality there as well. We recommend that you check out that documentation. You can create a file, create a directory, and then from here, you can also import a style guide or import a file or a directory. All right. Right next to that is the publish or commit button. It will say commit if you are connected to a repo. And that just gives you the ability to publish that to your repo or to your project in your workspace. Right next to that is your discard changes since last published button. This button has a lot of power. It gives you the ability, if you have made changes and you do not want to save them, you have the ability to revert back to the last version saved. That is a fun button. All right, here in the center, if you are working on lots of projects and you're popping in and out, this is just the project name. So that helps you understand where you are at and which project you're working on. Then right next to this is the branch and versioning button. Branches are if you have a repo associated, and of course, versions are if you are in the web projects or Stoplight hosted projects. I'm not going to go into detail on this particular button. There's a lot of information, and we're posting some documentation for you on that one. So we recommend, as you develop your strategy, that you take a look at that documentation. Then over to the far right, you're going to see the comment button. That comment button gives you the ability to collaborate with your co-workers in the workspace or other members on your API design documentation. It is grayed out right now because I don't have the right screens activated, but I will demo that later as it's available to us. Then you have the share button. Now the share button gives you the ability to change the visibility within your particular project. You also can add some additional teams or individual members to your project. All right, so now over here to the editor pane. There's a lot of information here in the editor pane and a lot of helpful shortcut buttons to get you where you need to go. So you can create any of these particular artifacts with these shortcut buttons in the editor pane when you don't have anything activated. This screen will pop up when you deactivate, and you'll see that when I actually work through the demo. Right here is the importing existing files, and you have the ability to import any one of these files, and I'd recommend you check out the documentation so that you can see what file types are supported. Down here at the bottom are some hyperlinks of artifacts that if you're popping in and out back and forth for different artifacts in the project, you will have a hyperlink that will show up for you. And then right below that gives you access to some documentation and reporting a bug as well as requesting a feature. Now we're going to hop over here to the left side, the project sidebar. And in the project sidebar, you'll notice you have some tabs. We're going to go through each of these tabs and kind of show you a little bit more about what is happening when you click on those tabs. Over to you'll notice that I don't have anything selected, but as I do select something, you'll notice your screen changes. So first priority is so you can understand we have some models or schemas that are showing up here at the top, and then I have some models and schemas down here at the bottom. So if it shows up at the top of the bar, that means it is a common model. That common model gives you the ability to reuse it within all of the artifacts within the Stoplight project, okay? And then down here at the bottom, if you have a model at the bottom, it is a model that is specific to that API. So it's only reusable within that API. It does not give you the ability to reuse it in other APIs at the top of the bar. Okay. So, and you'll see tabs that are showing up here across the top of your screen. This particular tabs, they'll just kind of build up, and you can actually come back here and you can close out those tabs if you don't like them across the top. But you notice your screen changes, and one of the first things, and I'll go ahead so you can see the screen a little bit better, is the form view. Stoplight, when you create an API, is smart enough to generate code automatically that gives you a baseline API. So when you click on your code, you'll see the code screen, and you can edit if you prefer to use the code and edit in the code view or the form view. You have that option. The next thing is the preview button. And this is the automatically generated Stoplight documentation. So Stoplight is smart enough to generate that documentation for you, so you can take a look and see if this is what you're expecting as far as your APIs. And then the button right next to that is your linting. So if you have some style guides applied or spectral files applied, then you may very well have some errors. So if you see the red circle with the stuff, that is an error. The little yellow triangle is just a warning. So you can heed the warnings. It's up to you. All right, so you'll notice that when I am clicked on the form view, that the comments button comes open. Now, this is the discussions feature. This gives you the ability to collaborate with all of your colleagues. And we also have some, if you have colleagues who are not in your workspace, but you have an integration tool that gives you the ability to collaborate externally, we do have that feature. So if you click on that little inbox tray and then click on your settings gear, you will see the collaboration for the integrations. Now, I believe it is only owners of your workspace have the ability to set this up, but then you can set up the integrations, and we are connected currently to Slack. So we can work with our colleagues who are not located in the workspace. All right, and I'll come back and demo this a little bit more as I actually demo building an API. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of that so we can clear up the screen. And we're going to go ahead and take the next step down to the component libraries. Now, component libraries is formerly known as design libraries. Now, this component library allows you to create shared libraries to reuse across multiple APIs, helping you be able to save time. You can reduce errors and improve collaboration. And there's going to be more links and information about the component libraries and its capabilities. But I'm going to go ahead and explain to you a little bit about the screen. So you'll notice that common models are showing up here at the top. And if you have a component library and you have leveraged any models or schemas from the component library, they're going to show up here down at the bottom of the screen. And I'll demonstrate how you can get access to your component library as soon as we do the demo. But you'll when you click on a model, you'll see the screen change again. It is very similar to your API tab. Now you will see the form view, you have the code view, and Stoplight builds some basic code for you in what a model would look like. And then you can preview what the automatic generated documentation is and if this is what you're expecting to see. And this is typically what's going to be visual when you're in your documentation view on the workspace. And then if you have linting associated with any of your models or schemas, that would show up here as well. Okay, and then you'll notice that when I click on that particular model, you'll see a little masking. So we do have masking available now, and I will show you a little bit more about masking in our demo, but you can see that you do have the ability to create masks. All right, so from there, we're going to go ahead and go to the documentation tab. Now, these are articles that are associated or created and associated to any APIs that you have created, giving your customers or who are your consumers of your documentation instructions on how to leverage the APIs or what they're expecting. So you're going to be able to, when you click on an article, you'll be able to create an article. When you create an article, Stoplight gives you some basic Stoplight flavored markdown. So it'll start that for you. You have some markdown buttons that you can leverage for quick access to create markdown. And then this button here is a handy button. Now, this button also shows up in your APIs and your component libraries tabs. And this particular button is if you are working on a public documentation, then that public documentation gives you the ability to, if it's not ready for you to expose it to that public documentation, then you can save it as an internal for the time being. That will then allow you to not expose that document to the public right away when you publish. Okay, this is just kind of a little protection button so that if it's not ready, you can use that. Then you also have the preview button that is available. You'll notice you can click it on and off. This will show you what you are expecting to see in your documentation. And then if you do have any linting set up, you'll have linting. And I do not currently have a style guide applied for documentation, so I have no linting associated there. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move down to the Files tab. Now, in the Files tab, it is going to show you all of the documentation that is either imported files that you have or APIs that you have created, docs, all of your model schemas and or masks. So there's everything is listed in this particular file, as well as your table of contents. So this is the only place that you will be able to build and create a table of contents. So when you create a table of contents, Stoplight gives you a baseline code for that table of contents, and you can edit it here. And then over to the right-hand side, you'll also see the preview. Now, this is going to be what you would expect to see in the documentation view of the workspace. And then you may or may not have some linting associated against that as well. So we're going to go ahead down here to the style guides. Now, in the style guides, depending upon your organization and what the rules are that are set up originally for your workspace, you may or may not have style guides applied to your workspace. As an editor or owner of that project, you may or may not have the ability to enable style guides. So you can come to the Manage Style Guides. You can come and take a look at all of the free available style guides that are created, and you can enable them. You can also click on the preview button. It will take you to another window and show you all of the details of the rules that are set up in that particular style guide. If you have style guides that are applied to your workspace, you can then preview those particular rules by clicking on any one of them, expanding the box and seeing the list of rules. And you can also scroll through them. Okay, over to the right-hand side, depending upon your particular role, you may have the ability to edit, and you also can validate those particular rules. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go back to our workspace because we're going to build a project from the start. So I'm going to use the plus button. We're going to go ahead and create a project. Now you'll notice that this is the project screen, and you have the ability, depending upon your role, to create an API, a style guide, or a component library. Now, my understanding is that owners only have the ability to create a component library. But from there, you can create an API. So we're going to stay in the APIs. Over here on the left-hand side, if you are creating a web project or stoplight project, you can create a blank project. If you are connected to a repo, you can create a blank project and have that saved to your repo, or you can pull something from the repo. But we're going to stay in the stoplight web projects for right now. And so we're going to call this Cheryl's training project, and I am going to make this a public project for now. And I do have a group that I need to apply this to so that I can keep everything organized. Some of those things are created by your organization. So we're going to go ahead and create that API project, and it is going to generate on my screen and build that project. So when you come in, you're going to notice that there is not a thing in here, but we're going to start building some of that. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to start from the bottom tabs and work our way up. One of the first things that I do need to do, though, is I need to share this particular project, because I have colleagues who are going to be assisting me in building this particular project. And so I have a team. So I'm on Amy's team. So I'm going to go ahead, bring Amy's team in, and there is the ability to control their particular role. I want them to be editors, and I'm going to send that invitation to them so that they then have the ability to access this particular project as I am working on it. So you'll clicking on the style guides tab, you'll notice that I have the same 3 style guides that are applied to this particular workspace that are mandatory. So what I'm going to do is I do have another style guide that I need to leverage, and that is my spell check. So I'm going to go ahead and enable my spell check style guide, and then I am going to go ahead and save that. And as you do that, you'll notice that it appears here in the list in my style guides. And if you needed to look at more detail, you could come down here and see those particular rules in the spell check. All right, to get out of that, you just click on the overview screen, and that will bring you back to your main screen. All right, so coming to the files tab, you'll notice we don't have anything in the files right now. Of course, it stands to reason, but we're going to come back to this particular tab, and we're going to be able to show you everything that we have done in this particular tab. So we'll come back to that. All right. So here is the documentations tab. We are going to create an article. So let me go in. When you create an article, you can create an article from the plus button, this shortcut button in the side panel, or you can create an article from the editor pane buttons. We're going to go ahead and use this quick button here in the sidebar, and we're going to go ahead and create an article. So we're going to call it our training article. And then, of course, in the tags, we're going to go ahead and create a tag, which is a best use case and best practice. So we've created that tag as a training, and we're going to go ahead and create our article. Now you'll see Stoplight gives you that baseline markdown. Now I do have some markdown already created. I don't want to cause any pain for you to have to watch me create some markdown. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to copy and paste that markdown in here. Now I can come in here and also edit it, but I want to do is go ahead and preview. So I'm going to preview it and look and see if this is the documentation that I am expecting to see. And yes, it is. It does look like I need to fix a logo. I can absolutely do that a little bit later. Don't want to bore you with doing that. And then if I have any linting applied specifically to documentation, then that would show up here. I do not have any style guides associated for so we're looking good on this particular training documentation. So we're going to go ahead and move up to the components library. When you come into the components library, you have the ability to create your models. You can do the shortcut button here. You can use the editor pane or the plus button. So let's create a model from the plus button. So we're going to call this one, for lack of a better term, we're going to call it Cheryl's training model. Okay, and then I am going to build a tag again, best practice. Okay, and you'll notice you have a couple extra buttons here. You have a common button and a single API button that you can build. Now, common, if you hover over it, it's going to tell you exactly what it does. It gives you the ability to create a common model that is shared between many APIs. And then, of course, the single APIs, it will give you the ability. If you click on the single API, then you have to actually choose an API. Well, that's a little difficult at the moment because I don't have any files or APIs. So I'm going to go ahead and create a common one, and then we will build that. Now you'll see that Stoplight is smart enough to give you some baseline code for a model. And you can, if you like operating in the code, you can operate in this screen. There's the form view as well. And you can see over to the right-hand side, the preview of the automatically generated documentation that Stoplight creates for you. And as you expand, you can see over to the right-hand side, and as I go in and edit, so we're going to just edit our types here, and we're going to go, last name. We're going to add an address, and we're going to do a city, and we will do a state. All right, so as you notice, then you'll see your automatically generated is live. It will create that documentation for you. So this is what is expected to be seen in the docs view of the workspace. All right, so one of the things that we need to do is we do need to do a little bit of editing, and we also need to bring in something from our component libraries. So if you have a particular item here or type, we can edit the type by coming in here, see where the string is. You can choose a drop down, and it would be a number. If you have a component library and you want to pull in a model from the components library, you can do that by clicking on the components tab. Then it will populate all of the components that are available from the component library. And so we are going to go the body, the vehicle body. And if you click off of it, then your screen will change, and you'll notice that that was loaded. That particular component library model is added here. And then you also have, if you click or kind of scroll or hover over the model in your project sidebar, you'll see a little mask right next to that. So if you click on that little mask button, you will see you would name your mask. So when you hit enter, it'll actually create it. What it does is it duplicates the exact model that you created previously. You'll notice that your screen has changed a little bit. So instead of garbage cans here, there are eyeballs. This gives you the ability to mask things. So I do need my first and last name to be required. And at this point, I don't need, for this particular model, I don't need the address, city, and state. So I'm going to go ahead and mask the address and city and state. This just helps me. It makes things go a little bit faster since I'm going to be reusing this particular model a little bit later on. And you'll see as you make those changes, you'll see the requirement, but you'll see the city, state, and the address, city, and state actually disappear in the preview. All right. So we are pretty set for our model. So we're going to go ahead and come up here to the APIs. Now, when I click on the APIs tab, you're going to see the models and schemas that you have created in the components library. This gives you that reusability functionality, okay? And they're showing up here at the top of your screen. When they, again, show up at the bottom in an API, then you know it's only reusable within that particular API. So you can create APIs from leveraging the center box, you can actually create an API from the plus. So we're going to go ahead and use the editor pane button that they give us. It's very handy. So we're going to go ahead and create a Cheryl API. Yeah, we'll just go. We'll call it what it is. It's a training API. And then you have the ability to choose the API specifications bar. It's easier for me to say, in whatever version you need it to work in. And then you can also save the file format to YAML or JSON. If you are importing a file that you need to have associated to this particular project, you would do it here. You can import those particular files here. So we're going to go ahead and create a basic API, and you'll notice that the screen changes again, and you'll see the form view of this particular API. And if you click on the code view, because I generated a basic and I didn't import a file, Stoplight is smart enough to generate that code for you. And you can see the code here. This is the baseline API. It gives you the ability to edit. Then from here, you can do it in the code view or the form view. And we also then can click the preview button so you can see the preview. And then if there is any linting, you can or will see that. So there is some linting, and there's a little bit of work that needs to be done. One of the other things that we need to do is I need to import some files. I already have some pre-created APIs, and I need to import those particular files. So I'm going to go ahead and come in to it always makes me find the folder here, but I have an open API specification that I am going to go ahead and import. You'll see that show up here. And then I also have a Postman collection. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in my Postman collection. So I'm going to go ahead and import that, and then we're going to take a look at those. So this Postman collection at this moment is you can see it's slowly generating, and then over to the right hand side you'll see I have some errors on it. It's going to take me a little bit of time to come through this particular one and fix all of the errors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, because I'm creating a public documentation and a public APIs, I want to go ahead and save this as an internal document until I have time to come back and actually work all of those errors after the style guides have been applied. So now we're going to go ahead and come up here to the open specification, open API specification. Can't speak today. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at this one a little bit deeper. We see here in the form view, and then I can see the code exactly. And then I'm looking at the preview, and it's so far so good. One of the things I do need to do is take a look at my linting and see if I can resolve that. So looking here, it says I do have an error. And so if I click on that, it takes me right to the code where that is applied. And it is obvious I have a typo. So if I fix that typo, you'll notice off to the right-hand side that the error disappears, that it resolves after the issue has been fixed, which is kind of handy, makes life a little bit easier. The second one is a warning. I think I'm going to go ahead and pay attention to that warning, but I'm going to show you what it looks like in the code, or from the form view instead of the code view. So this is the object for the contact. And so we're going to go ahead, and it just is asking for the object information to be filled out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fill out the object information. And we're going to put all of, and then as I tab through it, you'll notice over to the right-hand side, the warning disappears. So, and then this is just kind of as a note, it's seeing that it's saying it's misspelled because there's no space between those. So I want it to read that way. So I'm looking good here. Now, there's a couple different things that I need, and I need to go ahead and go to the collaboration tool, the comments tool, or we also call it the discussions tool. And I need to get the summary. Amy, my colleague, is going to be working on this with me. We've done the design. So I'm going to go ahead and tag Amy on it and ask her, do you have the summary for this API? And we have the ability to annotate. So you click the annotation, it gives you a little balloon, and you can come over and drag. It'll show her exactly what I'm referring to so that there's no question about what I'm asking. And if I hit the arrow button, it will send this message to her. You will notice that up here at the top right-hand side there, she is in the workspace. She is in my project. So she knows that this is coming, and she is going to be responding. And you can see in live form that she is sharing with me the response. And so she says, all right, she wants me to use this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. Perfect. So I am all set on my, and I just don't need to have this open anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out so that I can double check my preview. And it looks like we're all set. So we're good to go. I am going to go ahead and work on publishing my documentation. Well, you know what? I need to save that for just a second. I don't want to publish just yet because I need to come back to the Files tab. And you'll notice in the Files tab, you'll see all of the documentation, the articles, and the models, the common models that were created here. But I do need to get a table of contents. So before I publish, I need to build my table of contents. So up here at the plus button, I'm going to come down here to the table of contents. When I click on table of contents, remember I was mentioning that Stoplight is smart enough to be able to create some baseline code for you. It does that exact same thing in the table of contents. So over to the right-hand side, this is what I'm expecting to see in my documentation on the workspace view. And it looks pretty good. I'm not going to spend the time editing any of my table of contents. So now I can come up here and go ahead and publish my project. And so as it goes through, it is saving this particular project. If it's a brand new project, you're going to get one of these share screens that pop up for you again. And you can go ahead and just close out of that. We're going to go ahead and go back to the workspace and take a look. Now, because I am the creator of this particular project, it is pinned in my workspace in the documentation view. When I click on that, you're going to see the documentation generate. And you will see all of the APIs and the documentation that is created. And so if you've seen this particular demo and there's specific things that you like or that you are interested in, we recommend that you go back in and take a look at our documentation, because our tech writers have spent a lot of time organizing that documentation. And we are going to go ahead and turn this back over to Amy so she can wrap us up.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. As a reminder, we have posted a number of helpful articles in the chat window. So if you haven't had a chance to copy those, please feel free to do that now. And as we wrap up, I'd like to quickly review with you the Stoplight subscription plan options. You can leverage a selection of software as a service subscription options hosted by Stoplight. With Stoplight's basic plan, you can begin working with interactive docs and mocking servers, allowing you to collaborate with up to 3 users. Moving up to Stoplight's startup plan, your subscription includes 8 users who can collaborate on up to 10 projects, and it unlocks the approved email domain and custom domain features, allowing you to use your own host name to access your Stoplight workspace. You can also purchase additional seats as needed. By leveling up to the Stoplight Pro Team plan, your subscription includes 15 seats on up to 100 projects, along with 20 teams. Again, you can purchase additional seats as needed. The Pro Teams plan also unlocks additional single sign-on options such as SAML and LDAP, additional Git provider options such as GitHub Enterprise and Azure DevOps Server. Pro Teams also offers access to the discussions feature to help build collaboration when designing your APIs, along with access to component libraries and our new catalog API functionality. And lastly, Stoplight's enterprise plan includes unlimited projects and unlimited teams. You also gain the ability to access volume licensing discount when purchasing your user seats, and you have additional account invoicing flexibility and custom payment terms. And finally, you have enhanced onboarding and training engagement with a customer success team and enhanced priority for your support cases. As a reminder, all of the questions that were posted in the Q&A section will be added to the community in Discord in the Connect and Discuss forum. You'll be able to identify those by looking for the training tag. You'll see all submitted questions and answers in there shortly. And I have added a link to our Discord channel in the chat if you haven't had a chance to join us there. And that wraps up our training session for today. Be sure to check out our Learn with Stoplight webinars playlist for recordings of all previous training sessions, as well as recordings of our different product features. These can be found in YouTube by searching for Learn with Stoplight. You can also search for the how-to playlist for short trainings to learn more about specific functions. We'll stay on for another minute or so just to allow for any additional questions. For those of you who need to head out on your day, thank you for making time to join us today and learn more about Stoplight, and I hope you have a wonderful day.